Have you ever walked away from a confrontation feeling defeated? Not because you were wrong, but because you lost control of yourself. What if I told you that the very moment you allow panic to set in during a confrontation, you've already surrendered your power? This isn't just about keeping a straight face. It's about wielding calm as a strategic weapon that few have mastered, yet all respect and fear. Think about the last time someone challenged you. Perhaps your boss questioned your work in front of colleagues, or a stranger confronted you unexpectedly. Did your heart race? Did your voice crack slightly? Did you rush to defend yourself before fully processing the situation? If so, you've experienced firsthand how quickly control can slip away in these crucial moments. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. The truth that the powerful have known for centuries is startlingly simple. The calm person owns the room. They control not just the conversation, but the very atmosphere others must breathe. Has this ever happened to you? Watching someone remain perfectly composed while everyone around them unravels? That person wasn't just keeping it together. They were executing one of the most ancient forms of psychological domination. What makes this approach so devastating is that it requires no special talent, only discipline. Your raised voice, rushed words, and trembling hands aren't signs of passion. They're signals of surrender that everyone can see. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might completely transform how you handle every confrontation for the rest of your life. Developing unshakable composure isn't merely a defensive tactic. When mastered, it makes you impossible to provoke, impossible to manipulate, and impossible to forget. The composed individual creates a presence that others find simultaneously intimidating and magnetic. They wonder, what makes them so confident? What do they know that I don't? The wealthy, the powerful, and the truly influential never let you see them crack, not because they don't feel pressure, but because they understand that remaining calm while others crumble is the ultimate display of dominance. This isn't about suppressing emotions, it's about channeling them strategically while your opponents waste theirs in unproductive outbursts. Imagine walking into your next challenging situation, whether it's a salary negotiation, a confrontation with someone trying to intimidate you, or even a heated argument with a loved one, and remaining so centered that you control the entire interaction without raising your voice once. The possibilities are limitless when you master this ancient art of influence. What we're about to explore goes far beyond simple anger management techniques. This is about transforming how others perceive and respond to you on a fundamental level. The path to mastery begins with understanding that silence is not emptiness, it is pressure. And that pressure forces others to reveal themselves while you remain an unreadable fortress without cracks. If you found value in these Machiavellian principles of calm, hit that subscribe button now. I share powerful psychological insights that most will never discover on their own. The real competitive advantage in today's high-pressure world isn't just intelligence or skill, it's the ability to remain composed when everyone else is losing their minds. Think about how many crucial decisions are made in a state of emotional turbulence. In business negotiations, the person who maintains their calm holds all the cards, while their opponent reveals weaknesses through impatience, nervous gestures, and hasty concessions. This isn't just theory, it's the hidden truth behind virtually every successful deal ever made. What fascinates me most about this mindset transformation is how it extends beyond the boardroom. Whether you're handling a disagreement with your partner or facing down an aggressive stranger, The composed individual maintains control of their destiny while others are swept away by emotional currents they can't navigate. Their journey becomes one of reaction rather than intention. This brings us to what I call the first law of confrontation. You must master your stillness, or you will always fight from a position of weakness. Most people fundamentally misunderstand what panic really is. It's not simply fear. It's surrender disguised as movement, chaos mistaken for strength. Behind the scenes of every heated argument, there's a profound revelation waiting. The person who appears to be fighting hardest is often the one who's already lost. Your body betrays your mind through unnecessary movement, the fidgeting hands, the pacing, the rushed words. These aren't signs of power, but of internal collapse. The stillness I'm describing isn't passive. It's a deliberate decision to conserve energy while your opponent depletes theirs. It's the difference between the amateur boxer who throws wild punches until exhaustion and the professional who waits for the perfect opening. Now, I want to go even deeper into perhaps the most powerful tool in this arsenal, what I call the mask of silence. Most people completely misinterpret what silence really is in a confrontation. They see it as empty space, as weakness, as the absence of an argument. This couldn't be further from the truth. Silence isn't mere quiet. It's a weapon sharper than any word could ever be. When someone confronts you with accusations or demands, your instinct is to explain, to justify, to fill the air with your defense. But in doing so, you've already surrendered control. You're playing their game, dancing to their rhythm. The person who chooses silence creates a vacuum that makes others profoundly uncomfortable. Your opponent expected resistance, but instead encounters a wall they cannot scale or break. Most people betray themselves through sound. They rush to explain before explanations are demanded. They volunteer information that should be kept close. They speak to fill the tension, unaware that tension is precisely what gives them power. When you refuse to break the silence, you force the other person to keep talking, to overextend, to reveal their true position and, more importantly, their insecurities. I've seen this principle impact negotiations worth millions, marriages on the brink of collapse, and even hostile confrontations that could have turned violent. In each case, the person who mastered silence gained an almost supernatural ability to direct the outcome. They understood that words, once spoken, can never be taken back, but silence can be extended indefinitely, creating pressure few can withstand. If you're finding these ideas resonating with your own experiences, write "Silence is power" in the comments. What we've covered so far is just the foundation of this approach. The real depth comes when you understand how to combine these elements with precise timing. The true revelation behind silence is understanding its psychological impact. When you remain quiet in confrontation, you're not simply avoiding speech, you're creating pressure. Think of silence as gravity, a force that pulls truths from others who cannot bear its weight. This pressure transforms the dynamic completely, forcing your opponent to fill the void with words they never intended to share. I've witnessed this phenomenon countless times in my journey, studying human behavior. The person who speaks first in a standoff almost always reveals their position of weakness. While you remain a fortress without cracks, they begin to spill secrets, make unnecessary concessions, and expose their underlying insecurities. The mindset shift happens when you realize that by saying nothing, you're actually saying everything. What makes this approach so powerful is a fundamental truth about human psychology that few ever acknowledge. People are terrified of silence. We interpret it as judgment, as rejection, as disapproval on a primal level. The discomfort is so intense that even a mere 3 seconds of silence in normal conversation feels like an eternity. Now amplify that in Confrontation, where tensions are already high and you'll understand why silence becomes unbearable. Watch what happens when you hold that silence deliberately. Your opponent will lean forward, their voice will grow louder, their words more frantic. Their body language will betray mounting anxiety. All of this is a desperate attempt to force you to react, to give them some feedback, any feedback, to ease the crushing weight of your silence. Behind the scenes, they're experiencing a cascade of self-doubt that works more effectively than any argument you could make. This brings us to the essence of what Machiavelli understood centuries ago. True control comes not from shouting louder, but from saying nothing until the most advantageous moment. Most people fundamentally misunderstand power, believing it comes from forcing their perspective on others. The hidden truth is that power comes from being unreadable, from denying your opponent the ability to measure your intent or understand your thoughts. Consider how this impacts your daily interactions. When someone can predict your response, they can manipulate you. When they know exactly how you'll react to provocation, they own you. But when you cultivate strategic silence, you become impossible to predict. This decision to withhold creates an asymmetry of information that places you firmly in control. Don't miss out on more strategic wisdom like this. Subscribe now to master the hidden psychological principles that separate those who lead from those who follow. I've applied this principle in business negotiations where millions were at stake. The party that broke the silence first invariably offered concessions we hadn't even asked for. I've seen it in personal relationships where the one who rushed to fill the silence revealed vulnerabilities they'd been hiding for years. The revelation isn't that silence works occasionally. It's that it works consistently because it taps into something fundamental about human nature. What's fascinating about this journey of mastering silence is how it reveals our own weaknesses first. Many find they simply cannot tolerate the tension of those quiet moments. The transformation begins when you train yourself to embrace that discomfort, to sit in it while others squirm. That's when you truly begin to understand the difference between speaking from strength and speaking from fear. If you've ever experienced the power of well-placed silence in your own life, write "I." Embrace the void in the comments. The mastery of silence is just one element of this approach, but it leads us naturally to understanding why timing your responses creates an even deeper level of control. The most common trap people fall into during confrontations happens in the first few seconds. They speak too soon. I've studied countless interactions where someone with a strong position completely undermined themselves simply because they couldn't resist the urge to explain, defend, or justify before it was even demanded of them. This eagerness to fill the space between you and your challenger isn't just a nervous habit, it's a subconscious betrayal of fear that changes the entire dynamic of the encounter. Think about your own experiences. When someone questions you and you immediately launch into a detailed explanation, what message does that send? Behind the scenes, what's really happening is a transfer of power. Your quick response signals that you feel obligated to answer, that you recognize their authority to demand explanations from you. The hidden truth is that your eagerness to speak has already positioned you as the defendant in a trial where they are the judge. The transformation begins when you embrace what I call the power of the pause. By refusing to answer immediately, you seize control of something far more valuable than words. You control time itself. You dictate the rhythm of the exchange. A 3-second pause can feel like an eternity in conversation. Imagine stretching that to 10 seconds, 20 seconds, or even a full minute, while maintaining composed eye contact. During this extended moment, something remarkable happens. Your opponent begins to sweat, shift in their seat, and stumble over their thoughts as their confidence visibly collapses. I've witnessed this psychological phenomenon unfold in boardrooms, personal confrontations, and even hostile negotiations. The party that controls the pace controls the outcome. Your deliberate pause creates a vacuum that your challenger's mind fills with doubts. Did I say something wrong? Are they judging me? Why aren't they responding? Do they know something I don't? All this internal dialogue weakens their position while you haven't said a single word. This brings us to a crucial mindset distinction. Strategic silence is not the same as passivity. Many misunderstand this approach as simply hiding or avoiding conflict. Nothing could be further from the truth. The silence I'm describing isn't about retreating. It's about waiting until your words can strike with maximum force. It's the difference between scattering bullets randomly and placing a single shot precisely where it will have the greatest impact. Consider the weight carried by a single sentence delivered after a long, intentional silence. When you finally speak, your words land like thunder, impossible to ignore. The room remembers not what your opponent said in their flurry of anxious explanation, but how your single, in calm statement cut through everything like a blade through silk. This is the essence of verbal economy, understanding that less is infinitely more when delivered with perfect timing. I once watched a master negotiator sit completely still for nearly 2 minutes after being presented with unreasonable terms. The silence became so unbearable that the other party began offering concessions nobody had asked for, simply to break the tension. That's the journey from reactive communication to strategic silence. From being controlled by others' rhythms to creating your own gravitational field that bends the interaction around you. If you've recognized moments in your own life where you spoke too soon and weakened your position, type, "I choose my moment" in the comments. The distinction between silence and timing leads us naturally into understanding how combining these elements creates an unshakable presence that others can sense the moment you enter a room. When calmness and silence merge, something extraordinary happens, a synergy that transforms you from merely composed to truly formidable. This combination creates an unreadable presence that others find impossible to manipulate or predict. Think about the difference between someone who's quiet but nervous versus someone who's both quiet and utterly composed. The first appears weak. The second radiates an almost tangible power. This duality has shaped history more than most realize. Behind the scenes of every major negotiation, military conquest or business takeover, you'll find leaders who mastered this precise combination. Alexander the Great was known to sit in complete silence before battles, unnerving both enemies and his own generals with his composed stillness. Japanese business titans often employ strategic silence during negotiations, creating discomfort that Western counterparts rush to fill with concessions. The revelation isn't that these figures were quiet, it's that their silence came from a place of genuine inner calm rather than hesitation or fear. Now consider how silence itself becomes the stage upon which true power performs. It's a counterintuitive truth that most never discover on their journey to influence. The less you speak, the more weight your presence carries. Silence forms a void that naturally makes others feel smaller, creating a shadow they cannot penetrate or understand. This psychological impact works because humans instinctively fill voids with meaning. We cannot tolerate emptiness or ambiguity. When you wear this mask of calm silence, you fundamentally alter the dynamic. You no longer react to the world. You force the world to react to you. Every person in the room becomes hyper-aware of your presence, analyzing your minimal expressions, hanging on your few words, essentially orbiting around your gravitational field. This is the hidden architecture of authority that transcends title or position. I've seen junior employees command more respect than CEOs simply because they mastered this particular mindset. The most fascinating aspect of this approach is how it leverages the power of projected meaning. In the absence of clear signals from you, people project their own thoughts, fears, and insecurities onto your silence. Their mind creates an entire narrative about what you might be thinking, and remarkably, this narrative almost always reflects what they fear most about themselves or the situation. You've already experienced fragments of this power in everyday life. Remember the last time you asked someone a challenging question and then simply held their gaze without speaking. That uncomfortable shift in their posture, that nervous laugh, that sudden need to keep talking. All of these were manifestations of them projecting meaning onto your silence. They weren't responding to anything you said. They were responding to the void you created and then filled with their own insecurities. This approach requires a profound inner transformation that few are willing to undertake. It demands that you become comfortable with tension that most spend their entire lives trying to escape. But those who master it discover an almost supernatural ability to influence without effort, to command without shouting, to direct without pushing. They create impact through their very presence rather than through force or manipulation. If you've ever witnessed someone with this rare combination of calmness and strategic silence, type silent strength in the comments. This powerful synergy leads us to understand why controlling your physical presence, especially your breath, becomes the foundation for everything else. The true power of silence emerges when you begin to harness it deliberately. When you shape it like a blade that cuts without movement, imagine never again needing to shout, argue, or defend your position. Imagine simply remaining still and letting the weight of your silence speak volumes that no words could match. This is not some mystical concept, but a practical mindset shift that transforms ordinary interactions into opportunities for profound influence. I've observed this phenomenon across cultures and contexts, from traditional Japanese negotiations, where silence is wielded with surgical precision, to high-stakes corporate boardrooms, where the most powerful person is often the one who speaks least. The revelation comes when you realize that silence isn't what you do when you have nothing to say. It's what you choose. When you understand the impact of saying nothing. Now, I want to go even deeper into what makes silence truly powerful. For silence to become command, for it to radiate authority rather than weakness, it must be anchored by something fundamental: controlled breathing. This is what I call the breath of command, and it forms the foundation beneath every display of calm. Without mastering your breath, your silence will always be fragile, your composure ready to dissolve at the first sign of pressure. Think about what happens physiologically during confrontation. Your heart races, your muscles tense, your breathing becomes shallow and rapid. These involuntary responses telegraph your internal state to everyone around you. The hidden truth is that even if you say nothing, your body might be screaming your weakness to the room. This is why breath becomes the secret architecture supporting everything else. Behind the scenes of every powerful presence is a person who has trained themselves to breathe differently than the average person. When adrenaline surges and everyone else gasps for air, they breathe more deeply. When tension fills the room and others hold their breath, they exhale more completely. This creates an almost inexplicable aura that others can sense but rarely identify consciously. Breath is truly the hidden governor of your entire system. It dictates the quality of your voice, the stability of your posture, the clarity of your eyes, and even the coherence of your thoughts. In confrontation, when the stakes are highest, breath is the first thing stolen from you. And in that critical instant, your challenger can see your weakness before you've said a single word. Your racing breath betrays your racing mind. I've witnessed countless negotiations and confrontations where someone with a strong position completely undermined themselves through their breathing alone. Their words said confidence, but their shallow, rapid breath said fear. And everyone in the room, consciously or not, responded to the latter. This disconnect creates a perception of dishonesty that no clever argument can overcome. The journey toward mastering this begins with a decision to treat breathing not as an involuntary function, but as a strategic tool. Ancient warriors across civilizations understood this. From samurai to Roman centurions, they trained breath control as diligently as they trained with weapons. The insight wasn't that calm breathing made them feel better. It was that controlled breathing made them exponentially more effective in battle and intimidating to enemies. If you've ever noticed how your own breathing changes under pressure, type "I control my breath" in the comments. The mastery of breath naturally leads us to understand how your physical presence, particularly your eyes, can become the most devastating weapon in any confrontation. Your body betrays your mental state in ways far more obvious than most realize. The physical manifestations of lost control operate like neon signs, advertising weakness to everyone in the room. When panic strikes, your breath shortens dramatically, creating a cascade of visible signals. Your voice begins to tremble, your sentences come out rushed and disjointed, and a telltale flush spreads across your face. These aren't subtle cues, they're glaring indicators that even untrained observers can instantly recognize. What fascinates me about this journey into controlled confrontation is how each emotional state leaves its unique signature on your breathing pattern. Fear makes your breath shallow and high in the chest, creating a tightness that strangles your words. Anger makes it rapid and explosive, causing you to interrupt yourself and others. Anxiety makes it irregular and unpredictable, undermining any authority you might otherwise project. Behind the scenes of every lost confrontation is a person who surrendered control of their breath before the first word was even spoken. The transformation occurs when you reverse this relationship. Instead of letting emotions dictate your breathing, you use breathing to dictate your emotions. The person who deliberately slows their breath in moments of pressure radiates authority without saying a single word. Watch what happens physiologically. Their voice steadies and deepens, their chest expands rather than contracts, and their eyes sharpen with focus instead of darting with uncertainty. This shift isn't merely internal, it creates a ripple effect that reshapes the entire interaction. The most profound revelation comes when you understand that the room unconsciously adjusts to the person with the most controlled breathing. This isn't mystical, it's deeply biological. Human nervous systems are designed to synchronize with each other. It's an evolutionary mechanism that allowed our ancestors to coordinate during hunts or battles without verbal communication. When you regulate your breathing amid chaos, others begin matching your rhythm without even realizing it's happening. Their bodies literally entrained to yours. This explains why certain leaders seem to calm or agitate entire groups simply by entering a room. Their breathing pattern establishes the dominant frequency that others unconsciously mirror. Think about the last time you were in a meeting with someone truly composed. Did you notice how the room's energy shifted? How others began speaking more slowly? How the frantic pace gave way to something more measured? You were witnessing respiratory entrainment in action. I've studied this phenomenon in contexts ranging from high-stakes business negotiations to crisis management situations. The decision-maker, who maintains slow, deep breathing, becomes the gravitational center around which everyone else orbits. It's as if they're operating on a different wavelength, one that overrides the chaotic frequencies around them. Their impact stems not from dominating the conversation, but from dominating the invisible current of energy flowing through the room. What makes this approach so powerful is its universality. Regardless of culture, context, or language, the biological responses remain consistent. A Japanese executive, a Brazilian negotiator, and an American general all respond to the same respiratory cues because these patterns speak to something more primitive than our conscious mind. They tap into the limbic system, the emotional brain that operates beneath our awareness but governs our most crucial decisions. If you've noticed yourself unconsciously matching someone else's breathing pattern during an intense conversation, type breath synchrony in the comments. The mastery of breath connects directly to how you project your gaze, because the eyes reveal what the lungs control. The consequences of uncontrolled breathing go far beyond just looking nervous. They fundamentally undermine your ability to communicate effectively. Watch someone who cannot breathe properly under pressure. They constantly interrupt themselves, talk at an unnaturally accelerated pace, and take desperate gasps between phrases. These patterns create a cascade effect. Their words tumble out in a disjointed manner, their voice lacks resonance and authority, and even the most logical arguments lose their persuasive power when delivered with this unstable foundation. This revelation explains why sometimes the smartest person in the room fails to influence the outcome, while someone with a weaker position but better breath control carries the day. The hidden truth is that the delivery system matters as much as the content. Your breathing pattern creates the vessel that carries your message, and no matter how brilliant your ideas, they'll sink if that vessel is leaking authority with every gasped sentence. The transformative journey begins when you decide to train what I call the breath of command, a deliberate practice of making your lungs the metronome of the room. This isn't merely about slowing down. It's about creating a rhythm that communicates volumes without words. Each deep inhale silently signals to everyone present, I am not hurried. Each controlled exhale broadcasts, I am not moved by your pressure. This pattern creates both the illusion and the reality of calm, because the mind follows the breath just as reliably as the breath follows the mind. The impact of mastering this skill extends far beyond individual confrontations. I've studied executives who've completely reinvented their leadership presence through breathwork alone. Their decision to control this one element created ripple effects through their entire organization. Teams became calmer, meetings more productive, crises less chaotic, all because one central figure learned to breathe differently under pressure. What's fascinating is that this insight isn't new. It's one of the oldest forms of power that history's most influential figures have wielded. Throughout the ages, orators, interrogators, and conquerors all practice controlled breathing as diligently as they practice their craft. Cicero, Rome's greatest orator, understood that strategic pauses amplified by steady breath made his words land with devastating force. Military generals knew that steady breathing under fire not only steadied their own nerves, but built unshakable trust among their soldiers. Even executioners, perhaps the darkest application, knew that calm, measured breathing in the face of death deeply unsettled the condemned more than any threat could. Behind the scenes of history's most pivotal moments were individuals who had mastered this fundamental aspect of human presence. When Churchill delivered speeches that rallied a nation, his precisely controlled breathing created the pauses that made his words echo through history. When interrogators extracted confessions without torture, their unnervingly steady breath pattern played a crucial role in breaking resistance. These historical figures understood something profound, that human beings are biologically wired to entrain to the most stable respiratory rhythm in their environment. If you've noticed yourself feeling inexplicably calm or anxious around certain people before they've even spoken, type breath is influence in the comments. The mastery of breath control opens the door to the most visibly powerful element of calm confrontation, the eyes that can freeze an opponent in their tracks. Now we arrive at what might be the most visibly powerful element of calm confrontation, what I call the predator's stare. This isn't about glaring with rage or straining to intimidate. It's something far more primal and effective, the transfer of your internal calm into a focused gaze that penetrates your opponent's defenses. This stare silently communicates a simple but devastating message. I see you, I measure you, and I do not flinch. The revelation that transforms ordinary eye contact into an instrument of influence is understanding the profound discomfort most people feel when truly seen. In everyday interactions, we maintain the illusion of eye contact while actually shifting our gaze every few seconds. A social courtesy that prevents others from feeling exposed. When you deliberately break this unwritten rule by maintaining unwavering focus, you create an immediate power imbalance that few are prepared to handle. Think about the last time someone held your gaze without breaking it. How quickly it created a sense of vulnerability, almost as if they could see thoughts you hadn't even formed yet. This discomfort isn't imaginary. It triggers a cascade of physiological responses rooted in our deepest evolutionary programming. The stare unsettles because it exposes truth in a world built on comfortable fictions. When someone's eyes don't leave yours, the typical response is immediate. You become smaller, you fidget, you look away nervously, all unconscious signals of submission. The depth of this impact becomes truly fascinating when you consider the journey of someone facing this technique for the first time. Their initial reaction is often confusion. They expect the normal back and forth of gaze that polite society has conditioned us to provide. When that expected relief doesn't come, confusion transforms into self-consciousness. Is there something on my face? Did I say something wrong? Why are they looking at me like that? Their inner dialogue becomes their worst enemy. What makes this approach so powerful is the combination effect. When you align calm breathing and strategic silence with unblinking focus, your opponent begins to crumble physically before your eyes. Their pulse visibly rises. You can often see it in their neck or temples. Their speech pattern falters and loses coherence. Their rhythm breaks down entirely. Yet the mindset shift here is crucial. You've done nothing aggressive, nothing that could be called an attack. You've merely held your gaze with intention. Behind the scenes of this interaction is a profound psychological principle. Humans are the only primates who show the whites of their eyes prominently, an evolutionary adaptation that allowed our ancestors to communicate direction of attention without words. This made us better hunters and cooperators, but it also made our eyes powerful windows both into and out from our internal state. The person who controls this channel of communication controls the encounter. I've witnessed this technique transform outcomes in scenarios ranging from salary negotiations to confrontations with aggressive individuals. In one remarkable instance, I observed a woman silence an angry customer simply by maintaining calm, focused eye contact, while everyone else in the room flinched and looked away. The transformation was visible. His voice lowered, his posture changed, and within moments his entire demeanor shifted from aggression to hesitation. If you've ever experienced the power of sustained eye contact from either side of the exchange, write "Eyes never lie" in the comments. The mastery of the predator's stare leads naturally to understanding why controlling your facial expressions becomes the next crucial battlefield in any confrontation. The true potency of the predator's stare emerges not from intensity, but from emptiness. Many mistake this technique, attempting to glare with obvious hostility or strain, which only reveals how emotionally affected they are. The transformation happens when you empty your gaze of all visible emotion, creating a look that's measured, detached, and inevitable. This isn't about challenging them through your eyes. It's about communicating something far more unsettling, that nothing they're doing has any effect on you whatsoever. This emptiness creates a psychological mirror that reflects their own fears back at them. Behind the scenes of this dynamic, your opponent isn't fighting you. They're battling their own mounting insecurities as they Search your eyes for some reaction, some confirmation that their efforts are landing, and find absolutely nothing. The vacancy in your gaze becomes a canvas onto which they project their worst anxieties. The revelation most miss is that the power isn't just in the eyes themselves, but in the stillness surrounding them. Your entire physical presence must support and amplify what your gaze communicates. Don't flinch when they raise their voice. That tiny movement betrays that their volume affected you. Don't break when insulted. That momentary shift in expression confirms their words found a target. Don't drop your gaze when they step closer to intimidate. That reflexive avoidance signals submission. Instead, hold your position as if you have all the time in the world, as if their urgency exists in a different dimension that cannot touch you. This complete stillness creates an almost hypnotic effect. I've witnessed negotiations where one party maintained this composed gaze while the other grew increasingly agitated, eventually making concessions simply to break the unbearable tension this created. Now I want to go even deeper into how you can amplify this effect through the timing of your responses. Enter what I call the slow reply. Perhaps the most devastating technique against impulsive opponents. While most people rush to defend themselves with a flurry of uncontrolled words that betray their fear, the person who replies slowly and deliberately completely inverts the power dynamic of the confrontation. Imagine the scenario. Your challenger has just finished an emotional outburst, perhaps accusing you or making demands. The room expects your immediate defense. It's the natural rhythm of human interaction. But instead, you allow their words to hang in the air. You maintain your steady breathing. You hold your unwavering gaze, and you wait. 5 seconds, 10 seconds. The silence becomes almost unbearable for everyone present. Only then do you speak, in a voice that's measured and unhurried. The impact of this decision reverberates through the entire encounter. Your opponent has exhausted their emotional ammunition in their rapid-fire attack, while you've conserved yours for a single, precisely delivered response. The mindset shift here is profound. You're demonstrating through your timing that you refuse to be rushed into their emotional tempo. I've studied countless high-stakes interactions where this approach completely disarmed aggressive negotiators, hostile colleagues, and even personal confrontations. The journey from reactive communication to strategic timing represents one of the most powerful transformations in how you navigate conflict. Your delayed response communicates volumes. I am deliberate, I am in control, I decide when and how I engage. If you've ever noticed yourself getting drawn into someone else's frantic pace during an argument, only to regret what you said, type "I choose my tempo" in the comments. This mastery of timing works hand in hand with something equally crucial: the ability to maintain a completely neutral face, even when provoked. The true power of a delayed response goes far beyond simply frustrating your opponent. A slow reply carries a weight that rapid speech can never achieve. It feels chosen rather than reactive, precise rather than scattered, dangerous rather than desperate. In that extended moment, between their outburst and your response, something remarkable happens in your opponent's mind. They begin to wonder what you're thinking, why you're not visibly moved, and most devastatingly, they start to second-guess their own words. This psychological impact creates a hidden truth few ever recognize. The longer they wait for your response, the more importance they attach to it. Words delivered after thoughtful silence land with 10 times the force of those spoken in haste. I've witnessed negotiations where a single sentence delivered after an extended pause completely reversed the power dynamic. The revelation isn't that silence before speaking is useful, it's that it fundamentally alters how your words are received and remembered. The journey from reactive communication to strategic timing represents one of the most profound mindset shifts available to you. Most people speak defensively, responding to the rhythm others establish. The transformation occurs when you refuse this invitation and instead create your own deliberate tempo that others must adjust to. This decision places you in control of not just what is said, but how it lands. Now I want to go even deeper into what protects this advantage once you've established it. Enter what I call the neutral face, the shield that makes every word you speak believable. No matter how steady your breathing or how sharp your stare, if your face betrays you through subtle twitches, jaw tightening, or micro-expressions around the lips, the game is lost. Your opponent will see the crack in your armor and direct all their energy toward it. The discipline of the neutral face is perhaps the most challenging aspect of this approach because it runs counter to our social programming. From early childhood, we're taught to display our emotions openly, to show empathy through our expressions. Retraining your face to reveal nothing requires a complete repatterning of these deeply ingrained habits. But the impact of this transformation is immediate and undeniable. Behind the scenes of every confrontation is a primal dynamic that most never consciously recognize. People crave emotional confirmation from you. When they insult you, they're looking for the flinch that proves the barb landed. When they provoke you, they're searching for the wince that shows they've hit a nerve. When they threaten, they need to see the fear in your features to know they have power. This is the hidden architecture of human conflict, the desperate need to see that you've had an effect. When your face remains completely neutral, neither angry nor afraid, neither contemptuous nor concerned, their efforts hit emptiness and immediately lose power. I've studied interrogation techniques where this approach completely disarmed aggressive subjects. Their entire strategy depended on getting a reaction, any reaction, that confirmed their impact. When denied this fundamental feedback, they found themselves in uncharted territory, unsure how to proceed. This revelation explains why some people seem naturally immune to intimidation. It's not that they don't feel, it's that they've mastered keeping those feelings from manifesting on their face. The neutral face isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about controlling which emotions you allow others to see. This distinction represents a crucial aspect of personal power that transcends any specific confrontation technique. If you've ever caught yourself giving away your position through involuntary facial expressions during a tense moment, type poker face mastery in the comments. The control of your facial expressions connects directly to perhaps the most devastating technique of all, using your opponent's emotions against them. Now, I want to go even deeper into perhaps the most sophisticated technique in this arsenal, what I call the psychological mirror. This approach completely inverts the traditional dynamics of confrontation. Rather than countering rage with rage or aggression with aggression, you reflect your opponent's emotions back at them through your calm presence, forcing them to wrestle with themselves rather than with you. This revelation transforms how you view conflict entirely. Most people believe confrontation requires you to match or exceed the emotional energy directed at you. The mindset shift happens when you realize that reflecting rather than absorbing or countering creates a far more devastating effect. When someone throws anger at you and you return only calm observation, they suddenly see their own behavior mirrored in your stillness. And few things are more unsettling than being forced to confront your own emotional state through someone else's composed gaze. Behind the scenes of this interaction, something remarkable happens. Your challenger expects resistance, a push against their push. When they receive only the reflection of their own energy, they're left swinging at air, fighting a battle with themselves, while you observe from a position of complete detachment. This creates cognitive dissonance, so powerful that many will actually begin to doubt their own position without you saying a word against it. I've witnessed this phenomenon in contexts ranging from corporate negotiations to personal confrontations. In one particularly striking example, an aggressive executive began a meeting with accusations and demands, only to be met with absolute composed silence from his counterpart. Within minutes, his tone completely shifted, not because he was countered, but because he could see the absurdity of his approach reflected in the other's calm demeanor. The body itself becomes a crucial element in this approach. This brings us to what I call the calculated gesture, the language spoken when words are stripped away. While nervous individuals betray themselves through restless movements, the tapping fingers, the shifting weight, the fidgeting hands, the person who understands calculated gesture turns their body into a precision instrument of influence. The transformation occurs when you recognize that your physical presence communicates more than your words ever could. Every movement, or lack thereof, sends signals that others unconsciously process and respond to. The journey from unconscious movement to deliberate physical presence represents one of the most profound shifts in how others perceive your authority. What makes a gesture truly powerful is not its size or intensity, but its timing and precision. The nervous person moves constantly, bleeding power with every unnecessary twitch and adjustment. Watch them in meetings, always touching their face, shifting in their chair, adjusting their clothing. Each movement screams insecurity without them saying a word. By contrast, the calm person waits, remaining still until precisely the moment when their movement cannot be ignored. Think about the impact when someone who has been completely still suddenly leans forward slightly during a crucial point in negotiation. That minimal shift carries more weight than another person's wild gesticulations, precisely because it breaks a pattern of deliberate stillness. This economy of movement creates a gravitational pull on attention that no amount of excess motion can achieve. If you've ever noticed yourself leaking power through unconscious movements in tense situations, type "still waters run deep" in the comments. This mastery of physical presence leads directly to understanding the strategic power of knowing when to disengage entirely. Now, I want to go even deeper into what might be the most counterintuitive aspect of this entire approach, the strategic withdrawal. Most people fundamentally misunderstand the power dynamic of walking away. They believe that ending a confrontation means admitting defeat, that leaving the field signals weakness. This perspective completely misses the psychological impact of a perfectly timed exit. When you withdraw calmly at your chosen moment, you're not retreating, you're demonstrating dominance disguised as departure. This revelation transforms how you view the endgame of any confrontation. The hidden truth is that true power lies not in having the last word, but in deciding when the conversation is over. Think about the journey your opponent expects you to take. They anticipate you'll stay and fight, that you'll feel compelled to prove yourself, that you'll be anchored by their accusations or demands. When you deny them this satisfaction by simply disengaging on your terms, you create a psychological vacuum that leaves them suspended in their own momentum. Nothing, absolutely nothing, disarms an opponent more effectively than realizing all their emotional energy has failed to trap you in their frame. They've prepared for resistance, for argument, for escalation, but they have no strategy for your calm departure. Behind the scenes of this interaction is a profound shift in control. You're effectively saying, "I decide when this ends, not you," without needing to verbalize it at all. The mindset transformation happens when you recognize that withdrawal isn't something you're forced into. It's a precision tool you deploy strategically. This realization frees you from the trap that ensnares most people, the belief that they must stay until they've won or been vindicated. That compulsion keeps them locked in exchanges that drain their energy and diminish their standing when simply walking away would preserve both. For withdrawal to be truly strategic, however, it must be executed with the same deliberate calm that characterized your entire approach. It must be unhurried, almost regal, a slow rise from your chair, a controlled step backward, and a final glance that says nothing yet everything. This is not storming out or escaping. Those betray emotion. This is a decision made from a position of complete control. The art of leaving creates a silence so heavy that others in the room instinctively fill it with their own judgment, and remarkably, that judgment always favors the person who departed with composure over the one who remains, still emotionally charged. I've witnessed this phenomenon consistently across cultures and contexts. The calm departure leaves a psychological impression that lingers long after heated words have faded from memory. This approach ultimately leads to what I consider the summit of personal power in confrontation, what can only be described as the eternal calm. This transcendent state represents not just a technique, but a complete transformation of your relationship with conflict. It is a level where no insult, no threat, no chaos can stir even the slightest flicker within you. This is not acting calm while seething inside. It's achieving a genuine inner stillness that makes you truly untouchable. The revelation that changes everything is understanding that this state isn't temporary. It's not something you summon for specific confrontations. It becomes your natural condition, your default way of processing challenges. When you reach this level, confrontation itself loses its power over you. You no longer see conflict as something to be feared or even managed. You see it simply as an opportunity to demonstrate immovability. If you've ever experienced a moment where someone's words that would normally upset you suddenly seem to lose all their power, type "inner fortress" in the comments. This journey toward unshakable calm begins with understanding why most people remain trapped in reactive patterns when faced with challenges. As we reach the end of our exploration into Machiavellian calm, I'm curious, have you recognized yourself in any of these patterns? Perhaps you've been the one who speaks too quickly when challenged, or the one who fidgets under pressure, or maybe you've already mastered some of these techniques without naming them. Either way, this journey toward unshakable composure isn't just about winning confrontations. It's about fundamentally transforming how you move through the world. The difference between those who remain at the mercy of others' emotions and those who command every room they enter often comes down to these subtle principles we've discussed. The breath that never quickens, the gaze that never wavers, the face that reveals nothing, the timing that cannot be rushed. These aren't just tactics, they're the architecture of genuine personal power. If you've found value in these insights, if you can imagine how they might change your next difficult conversation or negotiation, consider subscribing to continue this journey together. The principles we explore here aren't about manipulating others, but about mastering yourself, perhaps the most worthy challenge any of us ever undertakes. I'd appreciate knowing this message found its target. If you've made it all the way through and something resonated with you, leave a comment saying, "Calm is my weapon, so I know we're walking this path together." And if you found this valuable, a simple like helps ensure others who need these insights will discover them too. There's a video right here that builds on what we've covered today, exploring how to apply these principles in specific high-stakes situations. Click and continue with me over there as we take this understanding to an even deeper level. Until then, remember, the calmest person in the room is always the most dangerous, not because they threaten, but because they simply cannot be threatened.